So what we can say about the fact that our actual condition in this economic crisis, we look at clear events that let us infer that there is effectively a crisis. These elements are, first of all, the reduction in productivity growth, the reduction in consumption, the increasing in saving, the fact that interest rate is at zero level, the fact that there is a reduction in the number of graduate and postgraduate students in universities, and the fact that there is an increasing level of public deficit and also public debt. All these elements with zero inflation rates, all these elements let us infer the existence of a crisis that is a deep crisis. Also, we have to consider the increasing in unemployment and also the increasing in the presence of need that is not in unemployment, education or training people. So there are many elements that let us infer that this is a crisis, and this is not effectively a financial crisis, but this is more a productive and productive crisis, and a crisis based on the reduction of consumption. So we have to argue why this crisis is not a financial crisis. This is not a financial crisis since effectively the banking system and the financial markets have not been affected by the crisis. We see that financial market still works, and banks have their financial stability, and there are no problems in banking system or in financial markets, or in financial institutions, or in financial organization, or in banking institution, or in banking organizations. The problem is the question of productivity, the fact that firms have been closed during the lockdown, and this has effectively reduced their ability to produce and to generate value, to generate goods, to generate also services. We have to say that in our economy, contemporary economies, especially in economies that have a high level of GDP growth, the percentage of the economy that is based on the service sector, that is the third sector, is among 70% and 85%. This means that when there is a lockdown, all these economy that is based on services effectively is depressed, and so there is a huge amount of losses, and effectively there is a reduction in productivity, and this is a crisis. But it is not a financial crisis. It is not a banking crisis. It's just a productive crisis, a crisis based on the reduction of the supply and the reduction of demand on services and goods, and it is more similar to many other crises that have been realized, for example, in the 19th century, or in the early phases of the 20th centuries, where crises then were generally crises of production during the fordism-taylorism period. We have to say that, so the fact that this is not a financial crisis can be a good thing, in the sense that since the banking system and the financial systems they are working, people could use financial resources from financial markets and from a banking system to restore the economy. But this is not happening, even if the interest rates are zero. And this is not happening since people have fear. There is fear about the future. There are lower expectations about the futures. All economic actors, all consumers, all entrepreneurs, they are all expecting a crisis, and this is a sort of prophecy that would be effectively realized. We can say that but financial institutions and financial and banking institutions can be a solution for this crisis. Can be a tool for solve this crisis. What we can say about what people can do during a crisis, during this kind of crisis. The suggestion is for people to try to produce more, to try to consume, do not reduce their consumption, do not create savings, reserve of savings that would not be used in this period. Do not reduce their expectations, individual expectation about the future, but try to pursue objective goals, purposes that were set up before the crisis. This is important since the complex of expectations of consumers and investors and entrepreneurs and also policymakers and bureaucracies, all these elements can be can help to reduce the crisis. But we have to say, if you are rich, you have not to save more in this period. Probably you do not have the ability to invest in some firm, but you can improve your assets. Since interest rates are zero and the price of assets is not rising, and in some cases is declining, and so rich people can buy assets. This increasing in assets can be effectively for a certain can be effective a solution for some kind of actors. If you are poor, for people that is poor, they effectively also they can have loans with low interest rate. But the fact is that if poor people needs subsidies from the state, this is a problem. This is a problem since the state, especially in Europe, there are many states that have a high level of debts, and this can create effectively a financial crisis in public finance. And so the solution is the activism of people, the activism of entrepreneurs, the activism of workers, the activism of students. Activism is the solution for this problem. There is no other way that activism to go out of a crisis that is a crisis of productivity. If you produce less than you are expected to produce, and this creates a crisis, then you should increase your production. And so the mindset to avoid the crisis is to have an aggressive optimism toward the future, aggressive optimism toward respect also of expectation. This can be the right mindset to solve the question of the crisis. But in these circumstances, it is important also the environmental values that are promoted among also policymakers. to create a scenario in which people can effectively trust. People in this period should trust institutions. This is a crisis. Politicians should reduce their dialectical contradiction, and on the other side, people have to trust institutions during the crisis. Later, when the crisis will be past, probably there will be a growing conflict among political parties and policymakers and institutions, and the legitimacy of the legal order, etc. But during the crisis, it is important that people respect the legal order and the institutional order of the economy. So these are the suggestions to get out of the crisis. If you have work, if you have a job, and you should have to try to find another in which you are paid more. If you do not have a job, you should try to find one. If you are a student, you have to study more. So if you are not thinking about enrolling a university, you should go to university and study. And this is for all skills. We need during this to solve this crisis. It is important that people restores its expectations.